This is Bishop Edward Weisenburger of the Diocese of Salina. This year, the Catholic bishops of Kansas are releasing a series of reflections on some of the key issues Catholics should give serious consideration to in this election year. This video concerns our biblical obligation to help the poor, and in particular the issue of usury and what are also called payday loans. This practice likewise is referred to sometimes as predatory lending. I think it is widely understood that a central part of being a Christian is showing concern for the poor. Current debates over immigration, social service, healthcare, and other key issues demand our attention because they affect the most vulnerable among us in a profound way. Moreover, the poor are oftentimes not looked upon with the dignity and kindness Jesus urges in his teachings and parables. Without a doubt, Jesus' proclamation of the good news to the poor and release of the captives needs to be heard today as much as ever. And while good, sincere people can have differing ideas on the best way to help the poor, a genuine concern for the most vulnerable among us is essential for anyone who would claim Christ as their Savior. In light of this truth, our concern for the poor must have a real impact on our decisions, our politics, our economics, and our culture. Now, that being said, there are some practices that are plainly harmful to the poor and simply contrary to the teachings of Christ. I am speaking here of usury, and before I go any further, I need to acknowledge that there are many good, committed Catholics who have little or no knowledge of the Church's teaching on usury. For our purposes, we can define usury as charging an unjust interest rate on a loan. We see usury condemned throughout the Scriptures as it involves the rich growing richer by demanding an unjust interest rate on the very ones who are the least able to pay. Until recent decades, there was an almost universal agreement that usury, or predatory lending, is unjust, immoral, and should be illegal. Indeed, as recently as 1965, every state in our nation had laws against usury as it relates to consumer loans. In recent years, however, things have changed, and they've changed for the worse. This teaching on usury has been forgotten or ignored, and laws regulating it have been watered down or quietly repealed. It's hopeful to note that there are still states in our nation where it is entirely illegal today to perpetrate usury, but sadly, Kansas law permits it, and it's thriving in our own backyard. Indeed, in towns across Kansas, we see the result, an explosion of payday loan sites that thrive in the poorest neighborhoods of our town. Undoubtedly, those who make use of payday loans do so through their own choice. That fact, however, does not make these loans just. The business practices of the payday loan industry take advantage of the financial vulnerability of low-income Americans. This runs entirely contrary to our obligation to show special concern for the poor and vulnerable. The practical effect of these loans is to transfer great wealth from the poor to the rich on a massive scale, and this is not good for our society or our culture. Low-income Americans, and increasingly even the middle class, can find themselves short on funds to pay the bills. If they lack good credit, a short-term, quick payday loan can seem the best way to pay the rent, keep the heat on in the winter, or buy food for their family. They then become caught in a vicious cycle where they take out more of these short-term loans to repay the original. Those of us who have never been caught in such dire financial straits have difficulty relating to the despair of those who are caught by these spiraling interest rates. Nor can most of us believe the astronomical amount of the interest rates involved. Let me explain. The duration of the average payday loan is usually 7 to 14 days, and the interest rate is 15% just for those 2 weeks, meaning that if the borrower cannot repay the loan within a couple of weeks and can only pay the interest, it actually amounts to 390% interest on that loan per year. Thus, if someone takes out a quick emergency loan of $500 and rolls it over, only paying the interest every 2 weeks, in a year's time, they will pay $1,800 just in interest. This becomes a trap from which people cannot escape. People stuck in these situations become desperate. I have personally heard some of their stories, and it's heartbreaking. Now, when someone goes to a bank, on the other hand, to get a loan under normal circumstances, the bank checks on their ability to repay the loan. This is not the case with payday loans. Most of these loans require no credit check at all because the lenders only make these huge profits when people are unable to repay the loan quickly. The very business model used in predatory lending is to loan to those who will be unable to repay. It's as if the person taking out the loan is being set up to fail from the start. Moreover, in the case of what's called a title loan, a person who falls behind in repaying these escalating fees and interest rates can actually lose their vehicle. Loss of their car can mean loss of their job and other severe difficulties for them, their family, and their children. As you can see, the end result is frequently the poor and vulnerable being plunged into deeper poverty and far more dire circumstances. Here in the city of Salina, when you add together the local payday loan shops with those that are permitted to function on the internet in the state of Kansas, there are actually more payday loan sites than there are banks. Most of us drive by these establishments without giving them a second thought, but the truth is they hold the fate of some of our most vulnerable brothers and sisters in their hands. Consider, too, the fact that a great many of the borrowers are senior citizens on Social Security. Brothers and sisters, please talk to your elected representatives about this critical issue. And when it's time to elect our representatives for the great state of Kansas, please give prayerful thought to selecting candidates who demonstrate an authentic desire to help the poor and those on the margins of society. Actually, being a responsible voter is one of the ways we put our faith into action. We also need to work for alternatives to predatory lending. In the Salina Diocese, our own Catholic Charities has developed an excellent program called the Kansas Loan Pool Project. It makes loans available to Kansans with poor credit, though admittedly we do so on a very small scale. The problem is massive, and larger efforts are needed than what we can accomplish alone. Perhaps it's precisely here, with God's blessing, that we will be able to partner with our friends from other faith traditions who share our beliefs on usury. But above all, remember that your efforts matter. They count. This issue is most serious, but as a believer in Jesus Christ, I have great hope. Kansas Catholics are good people. We know how to pull together when we see an injustice, and we're not afraid to right a wrong. And so in all your good deeds, and in all that you do to bring the gospel of Jesus Christ to life, may God bless you abundantly.